Hello, welcome to another edition of Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. This is episode 46, and we're focusing on complex trauma, motherhood, and the empty nest. Our guest is Ranyah Sabry. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and my website. Please like, comment, share, retweet, do all the things you do. Tag your friends in the actual post so they could watch this episode. All of our episodes are special. I think some of them hit, deeper than others. Dawn, is that a fair thing to say?
That is fair.
And this episode around what when women put all of their attention into their children, and then their children grow up and leave home, and kind of what happens, what's the process after that. I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people. I know this is the situation you find yourself in. Not your kids are out of the house, not out of town, luckily. But can you help frame this episode for our viewers?
Yeah. So, it's funny because I have so many of my friends are my age and have children that are either in their late teens, early 20s. And so many of them have said to me, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is your topic for this week. This resonates with me so much. And for me, it really does, because I know that I experienced a really major transition when both of my kids were out of the house, and I was kind of alone to fend for myself. And while that sounds like this really exciting, new, and I was just married, it's also a really scary thing. And you absolutely kind of drowned in not being needed in the same way that you were needed before. And it's a very lonely, very isolating feeling. And I think for women with complex trauma, it's, and I'm talking out of turn simply because I only know from myself. But I think it's a little bit deeper, because especially if you had childhood trauma, you put all of your energy and all of your time in making sure that your children are protected and safe, and that they have the best childhood they can possibly have, so that it's so different from what you may have experienced, that you kind of lose sight of yourself.
And that's not to say that some of these issues don't impact men as well. My daughter, as regular viewers might know, is 12. Dawn, she's actually turning 13 in just a few weeks, which I have to wrap my head around.
Yeah.
So we're not quite at that same point in life, but we are seeing the natural pulling away a little bit, the creating her own identity and kind of wanting that separate space. And so I can imagine what that might be like in just a couple of years. Whether you're a mother dealing with this or a father, I'm sure in any situation, people who've experienced trauma will experience these things differently and have a lot more kind of invested in that. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing what you say, but I'm also looking forward to having Ranyah on as our guest. A quick word about Ranyah before we introduce her. As I think you know, I first met Ranyah more than 20 years ago when I was living and working in Egypt. And it was just an incredible thrilled that when she came, she moved to DC, and she'll talk about that a little bit. But she moved to DC recently, and we had connected, and I actually bumped into her at a local Panera, and meant to reach out to get together and never did. And I just felt horrible about that. Um, but after our one of our episodes in January, where we ended the show um, with this idea of reaching out to your friends to check on them, and I want to give a quick shout out to Jim Newberg, who says it's an interesting and thoughtful topic. It was Jim that brought up that idea of check on your people, check on your friends to see how they're doing. And I literally sent Ranyah a message saying, I'm horrible. I didn't follow up after a couple of years of you being in town, of being like 20 minutes away. Can we still get together? Would that be okay? And it was my way of kind of honoring that call from Jim. And Jim, thank you for doing that. I got together with Ranyah. We had a 3-hour lunch. Pam joined, and it was just an incredible way to reconnect, and told her about the show, and she was fully supportive. She had watched an episode before, and she watched another one, and now she's a guest on our show. So without further ado, I do want to acknowledge Jonathan watching from the East Village, Kate watching from Milwaukee. This topic hits very close to home. And my friend Stefan Kaplan, former guest on the show, watching on YouTube. Hi, Neil and Dawn, switching hats to listener from producer. He just finished producing a show, Dawn, minutes ago.
Wow.
And came on to watch. Stefan, thank you for doing that. I know you understand. I was prepping for this show, so I couldn't promote the show that you did right before. My apologies. But he says, great to be here and listen to this important discussion. What a community you guys continue to build. Thank you, Stefan. So with that, here's the blog post that Ranyah wrote for this show. If my daughters don't need me like they once did, who am I now? And I think that's a question that a lot of people can be asking themselves. If my daughters don't need me like they once did, who am I now? Without my daughters needing me as much, who am I and who can I be? I ask myself those questions repeatedly every day. I need to focus on not allowing my empty nest syndrome to develop into a new, unexpected trauma. I also do not want to guilt trip my daughters. So with that framing, I would like to introduce you all to a good friend of mine. I'm so glad she's here, Ranyah Sabry. Ranyah,
Welcome, Ranyah.
welcome to the
Thank you so
show.
much, Neil. Thank you, Don. And thanks a gazillion, Jim Newberg, for your idea for getting us together. I mean, that was a very, very nice day for one of the best days I've had in the States since I arrived. And believe me, I slept that night much better than I usually do.
Great.
It was good to be surrounded with friends, and especially somebody I have known ever since before even have I had children. Remember? Back then, I didn't have my eldest yet when we were working
No, I know.
in Cairo.
When we first started working
turned
together.
21 in a couple of months.
So I was there in Cairo from 2003 to 2005. And so
Yeah,
it was
first birth was
2000.
2005. So I knew before I had a child,
Yeah.
before I became a mother.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
It's been
And now you're on the other side of that in terms of having had kids, been a mother, raised them. Your story itself, even up to that, before we get to the point where the kids are leaving the house and you're feeling this empty nest syndrome, your story up to that is full of. I mean, there were 5 different episodes that we could have done with
we
you.
couldn't decide which one to start with.
Right. So give us a little background in terms of your personal story, and then let's talk about where you find yourself now.
Well, I'll try to focus on me as a person, as a mother. I'm not going to try to branch out to me as a wife or me as a professional because there's so many stories there. But my house as a child was not a very happy house. And I really didn't give it much thought about what what I wanted to do. Why did I want to have children, or how did I want to treat my children? And I never really asked myself until that night after I was separated by a very traumatic event for another episode. And I remember them lying in bed, they were 5 and 3, and I was thinking, what or how do I want to raise these kids? What do I want to teach them? What do I want them to? I mean, I kept trying to think of what I want to do, and I couldn't find anything. I pulled an all nighter just sitting in front of them as they slept, thinking about how I wanted to treat them. And then I started to think backwards. What do I not want them to suffer? So this brought me to so many traumas I had as a child, and I don't want them to go through that, and I do not want them to feel that my love is conditional, because as the majority of the societies in the East, love is conditional. You have to be good enough, clever enough, your grades are high enough, or pretty enough, or tidy enough, in order to be loved, in order to be accepted. And as a girl, that was it's even more difficult for girls in a lot of the times. I didn't want them to go through this, so I kind of like had this, first idea, and I started building up from there. But then I realized, at that moment, I realized how much my parents' love to me was conditioned, because I was my one of my cousins was better or more clever or more tidy or got more grades, and it's always the comparison thing. So I started to touch my own traumas, and I could identify that these things I don't want my daughters to go through. And this is how I started to treat myself. So I had to deal with my own traumas and not to have them be reflected on my daughters. Fast forward 16 years later, now that my little one is about to leave the house as she ends this year, um, I am Ranyah, who had dealt with all these traumas, and I'm going to be left with Ranyah, uh, some traumas, okay, but I haven't been with her all these years. And now it's just me and her, me, myself, and I. And it's scary because sparing them meant that I had to treat me. And now it's happening. It's a kind of estrangement. Who am I again? I feel kind of strange. I feel like I don't belong. And it's starting again. So we work on ourselves because we love our children so much. We didn't work on ourselves because we love ourselves enough. And this is why the episode I watched, I think it was the 45th, Neil, when there was the motto, I love myself more. I love you, but I love
Yes.
myself more. Had I used that 16 years ago, this I would have been different today. But it was always them, them, them. And I would do it again. Like I wouldn't say I'm not saying I was wrong, but I didn't expect to be in this situation this early. Yes,
That's the
I love you.
that's the piece that Dr. Michael Kane shared with us when he was a guest. He was my therapist when we were in Seattle. As much as I love you, I love me more. Loving me more doesn't mean I love you less. It only means I love me more. More. And I think you mentioned, Ranyah, in the comments that day that if you had seen that earlier, that would have made a huge difference.
A
And
huge, huge difference.
more than one person has said that in subsequent episodes. They've referred back to this this phrase.
Because I'm not the same person who started this journey. Like me today is totally different than Rania 20 years ago. And I invested in myself. The main motive for investing in myself was my love to them, for them, you know, because I love them more than I love myself. But it's just now is going to be me and my cat, and I think you might see her because she's fond of the laptop. She might jump in a second. So it's just me and Mao. So what's going to happen now?
Yeah. Our friend there, and right on cue, she comes right across the desk. Our friend Paula Kiger is giving a hello. She's an empty nester herself from Tallahassee, Florida. And Paula, thank you for joining us. It's really really good. Patricia Freudenberg says grace and greetings from New York. She's also watching. Dawn, when we first chatted, you and Ranyah seemed to hit it off. I mean, you really just you connected in a certain way. You really understood what she was talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And like even with her talking right now, like it just resonates so much with me. Especially Ranyah, when you just said, I loved my kids more than I loved myself. And um I say that all the time. Um and I mean it. And that's like such an I shouldn't say unhealthy, maybe unhealthy, but like the guilt that I feel about like loving myself more than I love my kids, like to say that out loud makes me just feel so incredibly guilty. Like it's almost like it negates my love for my children by saying that, which intrinsically I know is not true. That it's like healthy and good to love yourself, but I loved myself enough so that I could love my children more, if that makes any sense.
Exactly. You put
Yeah.
it beautifully.
Yeah. So yeah. So I just I resonate with that so much.
So now that, with the empty nest and you loving yourself, you're not used to loving yourself that much.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do when the nest is empty, and how are you going to deal with it? And also, one of the things that made me think, I want to be alert, and I don't want my subconscious to drive me in this phase. I remember a situation years ago, a woman who had continued in a very miserable marriage because she wanted to take care of her children, and her children had grown up and they were still in the nest. But I mean, like, they've grown up, they graduated, and they worked and everything. And she was having a huge row with her daughter, and she was telling her, "It's payback time, and
Mm,
don't you get angry because you have 20 years of payback." And I
mm,
was like, this is
wow.
exactly what I do not want to happen, do not want to think. So this is why I'm very alert to how I feel and how I'm going to react. So yes, just like you put it, Dawn, I only love myself enough to love my children more.
Hmm.
And I created independent individuals. They're ready to fly, but it comes back. So who is this Rani I'm living with? Because I don't really know her. She's a stranger in a kind of way.
Yeah.
She makes sense when they are around, but when they are not around, how
Hmm.
would I relate to her, and how would she make sense?
Yeah. Yeah,
This
totally.
this might be this might be controversial, but I'm wondering whether um, in an extreme setting, is there the chance for any resentment to come in?
I would say yes, if a mother doesn't, if a mother, if I were not very careful, if I weren't keeping an eye on myself, I would have. It's very easy to turn into this person who claims payback time. She wants payback time
Hmm.
because it's easy to go there if one is not alert. It's easy, and hence to develop resentment. I mean, for instance, I wanted to bring my girls up in a certain way, that in the society where we were living, it was not very welcome. I wanted them to be strong, and I wanted them to be independent, and me as a progressive person. So any male figure around me was not very okay with how I was raising my kids, and having to be with this person meant that he had a say, whether I liked it or not, in a kind of way. So, and I don't regret it at all. I'm not saying that like I missed any golden opportunity, but the point is I wasn't steady with anyone because what they were bringing into the table in terms of my girls was not satisfying, and it was not serving my plan to raise them. So yes, like now they're older, they're independent, and they go their own ways and their own relations. And like well, I'm alone in a new country, and I'm lonely, and where do I go from here? So yes, it's easy to fall into resentment, and to become a nagging parent, like a painful a parent who becomes more a nag, rather than a loving, giving parent. It's easy to go there if you don't pay attention. Don't you think so, Dawn?
Oh gosh, yeah. I think mine is less about resentment and more about doing everything in my power to not make them feel guilty that they don't need me anymore or don't need me in the same way, right? Because um it's a healthy thing for them to want to be independent and to be on their own. And we always joke here that the only time I get a phone call is when one of my kids needs me, right? Like if somebody needs their taxes done, or somebody needs a password to the YouTube, or somebody has a question about where they go to get something. And to not make them feel guilty that they aren't picking up the phone and calling me and saying, I'm just calling to say I love you, or how are you doing today, mom? That's where I struggle, because there's a piece of me that feels that way, right? Like, well, I did all of this for you your entire life. You can at least pick up the phone and call me. And what's funny about that is that it used to bother me when my mom did that when I was growing up. And my mom would call me and she would be like, well, you haven't called me in 3 weeks. Good to hear your voice. And I always got so mad about that. And I always felt like, well, come on, mom. Like I have a life and kids and marriage and all these things. Like, you can't expect me to call you every single day and see how you're doing. And now, like, I feel myself fall into that space where I want I want more from them than what I'm getting. And again, that's all about filling that space that's empty with things that make me happy, that are self-care and self-love, to fill that space, because I never loved me enough. So I have to retrain myself to be in that space in a different way.
I want to bring up that mantra again. The as much as I love you, I love me more. Patricia said that in the comments that yes, this model works. I started using it. I started using it only a couple of years ago, 2024 to be exact. I remember when she actually had a family meeting to say that she was kind of instituting a new world order in the household. And this is a longer comment, but I think it's worth sharing. It was after she was going through a hard decision about a previous business, and people in the family were upset. And I said, I love you. However, I love me more. And onward, she told me her kids and husband the same thing, just to be clear that I'm changing my mindset for the better. And that idea of putting yourself first, in general, I mean, it's akin to the idea, they talk about on an airplane, put your mask on first before helping someone else. Thankfully, I've never been in that situation. I don't know that I could do that. I mean, as a parent, your first thought is making sure your children are all right. But it's a similar type of idea. You have to make sure you're okay before you can help anyone around you.
But there's so much one learns on the job. So by the time the children are out of the nest and they're individual, they're adults on their own, independent adults. There's so much work you had done on yourself. You should have done when they were before they came around. You should
Mhm.
have been conscious about your needs and your traumas and dealt with them, so you don't have to do them with them around, because that's just unfair for the parent and for the child. And I remember my daughter once telling me, I watched you mature when
Mhm.
I was a toddler. And I was like, what does that mean? She said, I could sense all your feelings. I
Mhm.
could see how angry and frustrated and then happy and bewildered and amused and overwhelmed. I was watching you develop. And that helped me because, it was just like watching a person happening. So I knew how to take care of my feelings. And that was, I didn't intend it to be that way. In a kind of way, I felt I've been um discovered or revealed, or I don't know, like as if somebody was watching me when I didn't know. It didn't feel okay, but I'm happy for her. But again, I should have worked on myself before I had the kids. And I think this is sometimes a mistake a lot of people fall in, because also one does not realize how much they would love their children. You
Mhm,
never imagine what is loving a child until you have a child.
mhm.
No matter how much you think, how many children you've had around, or siblings, having your own child, it's totally different.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think, that's when we're talking about this from a mental health perspective, that serious complex trauma um is something that when it's happening to you, you don't realize that it's serious complex trauma, right? And then, you know, like in my blog, I talk about I was 14 years old when I decided that I wanted to have children. Like I was 14 and I was like, I want to be a mom. And the reason that I wanted to be a mom was so that I could do everything different than the way that I was being raised. Like I just wanted to do all the opposite things than how I was being raised. And I thought, oh, well, if I'm a parent, I'm like going to do all these things different, and I'm going to make a space for my kids that's happy and safe and protected. Um and and so I think that, like, until, like, I didn't realize at that time that that was because I was experiencing complex trauma, right? I just was 14 and thought I want to do this differently. Um and I had a similar experience, Ranya, where my children watched me um you know have like a series of like panic attacks and moments of like um PTSD, things that they shouldn't have had to be a part of if I would have taken the time and space to heal those traumas before having children. It was kind of like I thought having children might fix all of that, and instead what it did was cause me to face all of that and work through that while they were tiny humans. And they too, will tell stories of, well, I remember that time, mom, when, X, Y, and Z happened. And I had to watch you go through this like transitionary period to, to feel better in that situation. So that resonates with me a lot, Ranya.
But that's exactly what you were mentioning now about, had you worked on yourself. I didn't want children. I mean, I didn't think if I wanted children or not. It was just like people got married and have kids. It's like the thing to do. And deciding that one did not want to have children, this was not something for my generation. I'm 53, and 30 years ago that was not a thing. Everybody had children. I mean, it was out of the question. So I had children because everybody did. And then that night I was telling you about, when I pulled an all-nighter watching them, I kind of listed the things, the traumas that I did not want them to go through, things that I have, just like, yes, Patricia, hindsight is always 2020. So I knew that, as a mother, I don't want them to witness A, B, C, and D, and I avoided those. But that doesn't mean that I was 100%, like I was a super diamond mom, a platinum mom. No, I went through things. I'm a person and I get an emotional asthma. If I'm too worked up, I start getting an asthma, and they learned to give me my inhaler when they were like 7 and 5 years old. They knew where the inhaler was, and they knew that mom needed it, and they knew what to do. And of course, that's too much for a toddler to take care of the mother, but it happened. This is the way it was. And I think that no matter how hard you try, yes, you could be better than other mothers. You could avoid some mistakes, but you never be mistake free. You could never assure that they don't have something that they would tell you later on in life. You're like, mom, when we were young, you did da 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 da, and
Hmm.
this caused us blah blah blah, and like, you would want to scream at the top of your lungs, but I had you avoid A, B, C, and D that you'd have no
Yeah.
idea about. But there's always something.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure.
That's funny because I,
I,
I have I have stress induced asthma too, and my kids the same thing. They knew where the inhalers were. They went and got them for mom when she couldn't breathe. Yeah, that's crazy. That's the same exact thing.
Yeah, Yeah.
I want to give a quick shout out. Srinivasan is watching. He's actually in Istanbul these last few days. So thank you, Sri. I know that it's like 2 o'clock in the morning out there, something like that. But he says thank you for all you do, all three of you. And this is a good time to remind everyone that this show is um, uh, sponsored by Digimentors. Digimentors is the social and digital firm that Sri started several years ago with his good friend Andrew Lee. I'm proud to be the vice president of events and communications, and I'm always thankful that Digimentors gives me the time and resources and tools to produce this show twice a month. I know that Sri fully supports this conversation around mental health. As you can see, Digimentors does strategic communications, events, and digital programs like this, trainings and workshops, and also a lot of work around AI. And I have been talking with Sri about being a guest on the show, and we're just working on dates. He's actually written about the impact of social media on mental health, and that's probably where our conversation is going to go. We're going to look for a good date when he's not in Istanbul and it's not 2 in the morning for him. But Sri, thank you very much for all of your support. It really does mean a lot. Rose, another colleague from Digimentors, is watching from Connecticut. Great topic. I believe Rose is also an empty nester, so she can relate to a lot of this. And Ranyah is watching from Silver Spring, Maryland, not Sprint, but that's okay because I know where she lives, here in the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. Ranyah, like me, has younger children. Her daughter is the same age as my Emily, so might have already turned 13 or is approaching 13. She has a younger son as well. So we're both listening intently, and we have the chance, hopefully, to not don't be like Dawn and Ranyah to a certain extent. Get ahead of the curve and make sure that we take care of ourselves and our own identity, so that in 6 years around college, 10 years after they're out of college, that we have enough of an identity built up. I will share that I had a conversation with my therapist recently along these same lines. We talk about the various things that are going on and kind of what I'm dealing with on a weekly basis. And so she asked one day, okay, so setting all that aside, what are your hobbies? And I had to, kind of sit in silence for a little bit. Without having a separate identity, a separate, kind of set of activities, people to hang out with or things to do aside from, work and, doing drop-offs and pickups and grocery runs. I'm setting myself up for that kind of challenge 6 years, 10 years from now. So it's something I'm definitely thinking about. It's also leading, Patricia said, it's also leading by example as the kids learn that self-love behavior. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, my kids did not learn that behavior. And they've mentioned that to me on more than one occasion, that, because I always put them first in everything I ever did. I'm going to give a really quick example. I think my daughter was 7 years old, and it was St. Nick's, and they got up in the morning and they opened up their stockings, and their dad had a stocking and their mom didn't. And my daughter started crying, and she said, "Mommy, have you been bad?" Yeah. And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Well, you didn't get anything in your stocking. And doesn't Santa not bring things to when you're on the naughty list?" And I never even thought to buy myself something or tell my husband, hey, you need to put something in my stocking.
Yeah.
And every year after that, I made sure that there was something in my stocking because I didn't want her to think that mommy was naughty. But I didn't do it for me. That's the thing. I did it for her. I did it for them. So it was like, my daughter and my son would always say, like, Mom, why don't you buy yourself something? Or why don't, like when you pick us up food, why don't you get something for yourself? When you get ice cream for us, why don't you get something for yourself? And I was always like, no, 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 no. Not even thinking that this is a behavior that they're watching and they're learning that, like moms don't do that. Moms don't take care of themselves. And we had to like try to reverse that as they were getting older because I didn't even think to do that for myself.
That's a huge issue, and I know that was a challenge in our house. Pam does the stockings and gifts, and she had to remember to put something in for her. There's actually a Saturday Night Live skit from a couple years ago that's that had some good reviews. It was the kids got all sorts of gifts, and the husband some really big things, and like the mom got a robe, like a towel or whatever. It was just like, it's endemic. I mean, I think this is a common issue for a lot of people. Dawn, you mentioned your blog post earlier. I do want to bring it up just so folks see what you wrote. The title, Rediscovering Oneself, Finding an Identity Beyond Motherhood. Motherhood evolves, but it does not erase us. It invites us to meet ourselves again. I find myself deeply reflective, sometimes longing for the feeling of being needed in the way I once was. The emptiness can feel overwhelming, heartbreaking even. You closed your blog post though, Dawn, on a hopeful note. You did actually lay a kind of a blueprint for how to avoid this trap, and that's a lot of that is self-care.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and my kids are 23 and 25, right? And a lot of times I think I should be over this. like how, my daughter, like she turned 18, graduated, and was out of here. Like she has not returned. She left. She had to come home for 3 months during COVID, and she was like, never again. Like she was gone. She was just independent. And my son, it took a little while longer for my son to leave, but I still have to remind myself on a daily basis that I'm needed in a different way, that there are so many ways that my children love me and show that they love me without calling me every day, without sending me a Snapchat, without texting me. And they show that by being these amazing human beings that, get up every day and they do the hard stuff and they're adulting and they're paying their bills and they're doing the best that they can in the circumstances that they're in. And that is rewarding. And that makes me feel like as a parent, I did something that laid the foundation for them to be good human beings. And I have to give myself credit for that because that was a part of the part that I played. And then on the opposite end, I take a nap in the middle of the day sometimes, and I sleep in on the weekends. And I'm learning to be okay with that and to not feel guilty that I don't have to get up and take somebody to a sporting event or, do all the things that I had to do when they were growing up. And those are okay things to do. So that's kind of how I'm trying to reframe and reshape how I enter into this next phase.
Ranya, where are you? So tell us a little bit more about where your kids are in this process. They have moved out of the house. You're fully
My eldest moved out in the house 3 years ago to Norfolk and now Virginia Beach. She's staying there. She thought about coming closer. She told me I could come closer, but I don't want to go come back and live with you, which is understandable. But the cost of living, of course, there is much cheaper than here. She's totally supporting herself. I'm extremely proud of her. My little one is finishing college, finishing school in a couple of months, and she's planning on moving out to Richmond already. She's been almost fully financially independent for a year. So yes, I'm very proud of them, and I'm very very proud that this is their mindset. Um, Especially that in again in the Orient, people don't raise their kids like that, but I managed to do it, and I'm very proud of that. Uh, Sarah's getting her associate's degree this year. She's doing business, and she wants to do accounting. The little one wants to study theater. She got outstanding actress for the region, and she's very much into drama. She writes drama herself. She's always, I mean, like I discover again. I this was not the plan that I laid for her, but she used to take dancing lessons since she was 4. Music, movement, rhythm. A lot of extracurricular activities that really made her strong. And she told me this is when she realized she wanted to be a performer of sorts. So I think she's going to be taking a gap year. She has a job in Richmond waiting for her. Actually, she's sitting for her cosmetology license next month, and she has a job waiting for her for Richmond, and she plans on going there a gap year, and then deciding what she wants to do next. But she already has a place at VCU. So yeah,
so you see it in terms of when she leaves. You have like a date certain that she's going to be leaving.
most probably right after my birthday. I turned 53 on the 17th of June. I think she's leaving on the 19th. Yep.
Wow, wow.
So
We'll have to talk. My birthday is June 9, so maybe we can get together in between then to celebrate.
of course,
Um,
of course, and I'll give you a few ideas for as Emily turns into the teens. You
yeah,
might
well, by
like
that point, she'll already be,
13 by then.
gosh, she'll already be 13 by then.
So, I mean, being a mother is the most rewarding job in the world, but it cuts so close to the heart, and there's no way to avoid that, no way to dilute that. But the point is getting, like being self-aware, so we don't have this, just like you said, turn into resentment. I don't want to guilt trip my kids. I mean, honestly, my daughter's my the one who doesn't live with me. She gives me a phone call maybe every day on her way to work. It's like, hi, my shift is blah blah blah. I mean, sometimes it's only for 40 seconds, but she remembers to phone. She realizes that also I'm in this country. I don't have many people. My life back home was really really full. Um, so like last not last Christmas, the one before, she decided she wanted as a present. She printed me. She got a lot of our pictures off Facebook off my account, and she printed me loads and framed them, which was the best idea ever. But when she went through these photos, she told me, Mom, I didn't realize how much your life was full over there, because she went through all the photos and the events and the parties, and she said, and it's very different for you here. I would do it again. I mean, they're happier. I trust this is better for the future, but it is difficult. And now I have to take care of my third child, which is Rania, because
Mhm.
actually Rania as a child was not very taken care of for different reasons. And now I don't blame my parents. I don't blame my parents for that. My mother got pregnant with me when my eldest brother was fighting cancer, and he passed away when he was 4 years and a half.
Mm,
I was born a few months later, his spitting image, but
mm,
he was a boy, I was a girl.
mhm,
And that was very, very difficult. I mean, like, I always felt how difficult it was for me as the child, but when I became a parent, I can imagine what they must have went through. And back in the days, 50 years ago, nobody spoke about mental health or or seeing a therapist or talking to your that was not even that was not acceptable. That was not even an idea. So I really feel for them, and it's very very painful, especially that I was his spitting image.
Mhm.
And the relation was very tense until I started looking more like a girl, the until maybe 12 or 13s. Then they started to believe, or started to sense I was someone else.
Mhm.
So I really understand what they went through, and I'm very sorry for that. And that's why I was paying the girls so much attention, because I wanted to protect them from myself becoming, like drifting away or not really focusing on them. But now things are different. I'm proud of what I did. I'm really proud of how I raised them. But it's time for Rania, the third child.
Mhm.
Okay, she has to be taken care of some part of her life. So I think that's what I'm going to do now. But again, I have to be aware not to be too selfish, too greedy, too rash. You
Mhm.
know, so many things could go wrong.
One factor we haven't explored, Dawn, and this is something that you and Rania both share, but it played out differently for both of you. Um, Rania raised her kids as a single mom in Egypt. For the most part, before moving out. But divorced, Rania, if I remember correctly, you divorced your husband early on. The kids were still little. Dawn, you and your husband got divorced. Your kids were older, I think, in high school, if not near graduation, just recently, even older.
Mhm.
How does that play into this in terms of the framing that you're talking about of putting so much attention on your children, but doing it within the context of a being a single parent, being a late divorce, etc. Dawn, we'll start with you if that's okay.
So this is a very touchy topic, because my children were extremely, extremely hurt by my husband and I getting a divorce. We were married for 23 years. Um, my daughter was in college. My son was 19, I believe. Um, and my daughter especially had a very, very difficult time understanding why why we were getting a divorce. And it really played out for her in her idea of a happy, loving family sort of got crushed for her. And she had a really difficult time understanding. I think she had a feeling, and I hate to speak for her, um, but I think there was a feeling that what she questioned, like, was her whole life a lie because my husband and I were in this loving relationship, and then it ended. Which we had a very loving relationship. We had a great relationship. We loved our children incredibly much. We raised them together. He was a very good father. So there was a lot of difficulty, and I think that caused an isolation between her and I that we're still working through.
Rania?
Well, my daughters were little. They were 5 and 3 at the time, and uh, it wasn't. Well, it didn't. It wasn't. We didn't agree to be separated. But let's say he had a group of friends, a huge group of friends, and they became more and more part of the house. They're always there. They're always in the house, and that was just unacceptable. So when I took the girls and left because there was no environment to bring up the girls in, um, for them it was always he left us. I mean, like, well, that's what they used to say. He left us for them, okay, for the group, for the and this in a kind of way. I mean, it was very painful because they felt that he had chosen somebody else, but at the same time, they didn't think of him as an individual, if you know what I mean. He wasn't the father. He wasn't, and he didn't used to take them to school or run them errands or take them to their activities, so they didn't miss that part. So in a kind of way, it was cushioned when they were little, but it was just like, why doesn't he want to? It's like, why doesn't he want to be our father? It was very painful, and as a mother, I was keen not to have them like go into self pity and wallowing about why me, why doesn't he want me? I didn't want them to go there, because it's very easy to feel sorry, to victimize oneself, and to get on the cross and to live there for the rest of their lives. I was really scared that they would do that. So I remember once, they were maybe 5 years and 6 months and 3.5, and my eldest was having one of her breakdowns. So I acknowledged her pain, and I told her, I understand, it hurts, just and I don't like not having a husband, but it's the way it should be. We have to look forward. And I told her, this is the fifth time we sit and speak about this. I'm not going to be with you if you have this phase, if you have this fit for a sixth time. Okay. So when she did, it was like 2 3 weeks later, I told her, I told you, I'm done with, like, I understand you're in pain, and I really acknowledge your pain, and I validate it, but I'm not going to spend time. Today is my day off, and I was planning on taking you out. She said, I don't want to go out. I'm so sad. I said, okay, I'm going to take your little sister. So we went out and we played games, and we did things, and we came back home, and the eldest was there, Sarah, and Lily came in, and she said, "You should have come. We had a great time." So she said, "I sat here sad and nothing happened. Nothing changed." I was like, "Yes, exactly. This is what I need you to understand. It's not going to change. I understand you're sad. It would always be deep in your heart, but you have to put it aside because you missed a very nice outing and a very good time. If you had come with us, maybe you would have been happier by now." So I was keen to make them, like, not have them fall as victims, feel as such. And I did a good job. But I needed to do that for myself, while they were growing up. And to the extent that only a few months ago, and I'm speaking about maybe 5 months ago, I saw a picture of their father. And we have been divorced for 16 years. And it's just as if I finally had the time, and I had the time and the mental space and capacity to grieve my marriage.
Mm.
And I remember, just I sat down, and it all came back to me that, like, I'm divorced and I'm single, and I had to go there only when I felt that my kids were safe. Could I afford to do that?
Mhm.
So yes, being a single mother, it's just like they say, it's twice the work, twice the reward, twice the joy. But again, it's very, very tough. It's very tough on somebody to be a single parent, especially because if it happens because of an unplanned divorce, like in my case, the person um, has to come, has to manage the situation, has to control the damage, has to take care of the kids, and this puts a lot more pressure on the individual. So fast forward to an empty nest, maybe I need to deal with my own traumas that I haven't really had the time to look at when they
Mm.
were little.
Yeah,
I would
that's
think that.
yeah.
Go ahead, Don.
No, I was just going to say that's, deal like having that opportunity to have the time to be able to do that. I'm curious if you're looking forward to it or dreading it, or you're just kind of neutral about it, or you just don't know what to expect.
All of that, all of
Yeah,
that. Looking forward, I'm dreading it. I don't know
yeah,
what to expect.
yeah,
I'm scared of what I might find, or what I might not find.
yeah.
Um, I was just thinking the other day, what if I decide, like, I've done what I can. Kids, you're in the States. I'm going back. I'll get a house by the beach, and I'll live there. End of story. I
Yeah.
don't want to be anybody's anything. I don't want to be anybody's mother or husband or wife or girlfriend or nothing. Is that a possibility? Yes, it's a possibility. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but all options are open. Like, I don't. I paid my dues and anything could happen. I'm going to accept it with an open heart. Like, I'm not going to nag about it, or I've paid my dues, done my motherhood time, and I think I have, like, more time for myself now, I believe.
I'm still working on getting there. Still working on getting there because like I'm unemployed right now, and I could go anywhere, right? I could move anywhere. I could get a job anywhere. There's nothing holding me here except that my dad is still alive and he's 87 years old. But other than that, but then I'm always like, yeah, but my kids are here. Oh, my kids are here. I can't leave because my kids are here. And I don't know if I want to be far away from them. But then on the other end, I'm like, wait a minute, they're not pining to stay here because I live here. Like they're talking about, oh, where do I want to go? Where do I want to live? How far away can I get? So I'm still working on that. But I like what you've sort of said, that like I need to think a little differently about that, I
And
think.
all options are open. But I mean, again, a few months ago, my daughter went to a game in Pittsburgh. Okay, and she loved the state, and she said people are so nice. Blah, blah. I'm thinking I'm moving to Pittsburgh, and I just caught myself and was like, where are you going again? And I'm not gonna follow you because I shouldn't, because it's not my right. And it's always going to be like that. If she decides to move, or if she decides to move to one state and the other one to another. I mean, like, the
Yeah.
little one is she has a play being read in Mammoth Theater in New York, and she might be going there for a couple of months. And of course, New York, she might stay. So one would be in the south and the other in the north. So where does that leave me? Uh, Scary.
Right in Virginia, halfway between.
Exactly, halfway through. But I'm not planning on going to either one. It's I think it's a dilemma, and the point is, like, it hasn't been discussed enough. It hasn't been worked on enough, uh, in terms of people writing on maybe, I don't know, groups, books. I've seen so many books about dealing with your trauma, dealing with this, dealing with that. But an empty nest, motherhood after an empty nest, is something, like, I think there so many people need to know what to do.
Yeah.
I want to see women in the same situation. um we're just gonna, I don't know, sit and knit, or have, or play golf, or go, like, kayaking, something of the sort, because we understand the psyche. It's different from just being single.
Mhm.
Like, being single, a person is single and looking for someone, or trying to meet someone, that's understandable. But somebody who's went through all this, and now the nest is empty, what do they do? They have so much time on their hands. And even if she's still married, there's just so much time on her hands. What does she do with it? And she wants to wait to fill her time, and to dissipate the energy as well, because we don't want to turn into nags. and
Mhm.
and the easiest way to do that is to have too much time on one's hand, to
Mhm.
start thinking about this, or thinking, oh, when was the last time she phoned me, when was the last time she asked about me, da, da, da. I don't want to go there. So I believe that this is one of the topics that, because it's very woman related, it hasn't been studied enough, it hasn't been given enough attention, and there's so much to be done about it, and so much should be done about it, and it's a huge, huge market there.
Yeah.
What occurs to me is both of you have shared the challenges that you're facing, and you've both experienced, a lot of trauma, and that it informs this experience. And you've both dealt with divorce as well, and that's another kind of complicating factor for mothers, for couples. I don't want to say that everyone has trauma, although I'm sure more people have trauma than we realize that talk about it. But even if they don't have the extent of trauma that we're talking about, and if they're not dealing with a divorce, these issues are very real, even for a more kind of straightforward, uncomplicated situation. You see all these stories about people who've been married for 30 years and getting divorced well after the kids have moved out. I mean, I think a lot of that is uh, at the point where people are discovering themselves without the context of their kids. And now who am I? And oh wait, here's this person next to me, and that's not, I've been so focused on the kids, I'm not really. Yeah, I go back to Dawn. If you remember, Mike Wood was on the
Yeah.
show several months ago. He's actually the COO of NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and he shared that he and his wife put all their attention on their son who had special needs, and they really turned their focus. It was 100% on addressing their child's needs, and they stopped focusing on each other at all, and they ended up separating because of that. So I think that's a huge issue. Any final thoughts before we bring this episode to a close, since we're hitting the full hour mark? Ranyah, anything you'd like to share?
No, it's just if you can really love yourself more in order to have everybody happier, in order to avoid trauma for the remaining part of your life, please do, because that's very, very important. And yeah, I hope that close enough or soon enough there would be something to bring empty nesters together. They have so much to talk about and so much in common. I believe it would be nice and cozy to find such a group.
For sure.
Dawn, any thoughts?
Just like, if this resonated with you at all, like, know that you are not alone in these feelings. Like, when we had the prep show and Ranyah and I were like talking, it was like we just had never met, had never talked. We were on the phone. We weren't even looking at each other. And there was just that like instantaneous, like, oh my God, somebody who understands, somebody who gets it. So I'm sure there are lots of us out there. And like Ranyah said, it's a very lonely feeling, and we could make it a lot less lonely if there was a way to connect. So
as a reminder for folks, if you joined us late, as soon as we're done, you'll be able to find the show just a few minutes after we end the show on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and my website. You can watch it from the very beginning. I'm going to put that mantra back on the screen. I'm going to ask Dawn and Ranyah to join me and pay a little tribute to Dr. Kane, who introduced us to the concept. Let's close out the show by saying it together. Please don't kill me. We willing to do that?
Yep.
As much as I love you,
I
love me more. Loving me more doesn't mean I love you less.
It
only means
I
love me more.
More.
I'm hoping everyone in the audience has a chance to internalize that as well, because this is really meaningful. These are meaningful words, and I heard these every week when I was in therapy for about 10 years with Dr. Kane, and it certainly, I can't say that I fully adopted it, but I've heard it several times and I'm working on it. Ranyah, thank you again for joining us.
So much.
It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you for taking us down this road on this very important conversation. We have several episodes we're planning for April, Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and we'll be sharing those details as soon as we have them finalized. Thank you, and good evening. And Jonathan ends it by interesting show. Thank you. Good night.